Meet Eevee. Eevee is hot. She is slim with womanly curves. She looks really good in a low-cut milkmaid dress.
I bet she'd wear tight clothes to the gym.
Oh, she so would.
She would.
She is married, and her favourite thing about her husband is that he is obsessed with her. She likes skincare, makeup and manicures, gossip about peak millennial celebrities like Justin Bieber, and she's just stopped taking the pill. She works but not too hard because the soft life beckons. She knows being a mum is better than being a boss, and she really doesn't like that new Snow White movie, even though she hasn't seen it yet.
Because it's too woke.
Yeah, it's definitely too woke. Eevee is not a person. Eevee is actually a magazine and a media brand that calls itself the Conservative Cosmo, or other people have labelled it that. And it's a celebration of femininity over feminism. And over in the US, she actually, Eevee, the magazine, represents something a lot bigger, a sort of pushback that you're seeing through the rise of tradwife content and all those kind of things about the models of womanhood that a Trump voting generation is done with. So I'll just give you a couple of quick tastes of the kind of things that Eevee carries. So on the surface, if you followed their Instagram, a lot of the same kind of stories you'd see in media aimed at women anywhere, including Mamamia, nail trends, White Lotus theories. But inside, things are a little more ideological. Take, for example, a beauty feature. Now, beauty features are always the standard thing in women's mags, right? This one was written by Robin Riley, and it pushes back against body positivity and celebrates natural beauty. Here's a little extract. Without being able to hold objectively beautiful women up and celebrate their excellence, we lose touch with our ability to create beauty in our own lives. The more obese, over-sexualized and unhealthy women we hold up, the uglier the ordinary woman becomes in response. Interesting. Young women in the West have never been more confused about what it means to be beautiful. Too often they think letting themselves go and not taking care of themselves is just fine because we have beauty at any size now.
Oh, she wouldn't like me at the gym.
Oh, no. They also have sex tips, but they are labelled for married women only. And here's a little bit about a piece by millennial writer Delphine Chu about rejecting feminism. We women are not made for the daily grind. While men have a 24-hour testosterone cycle, we have a 4-week cycle. There's a lot of cycle talk in Eevee, which I'm sure we'll get to, Jessie, that impacts everything for our energy levels, sweet quality, food cravings. It took me my entire 20s to realise it was impossible for me to live, love, or lead like a man. Eevee's founders are deeply photogenic young married parents, Brittany and Gabrielle Hugo Boom, and they say that the conventional women's magazines are too feminist, too ideological, and too anti-feminine. Mia, you were one of the absolute forefront leaders of women's magazines in Australia when they were a big thing. Did you think they were inherently political when you were editing them?
Well, some women's magazines were. Cleo and Cosmo were very transgressive when they first started, because when you go back to those times in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s when they were probably at their peak, there was no other women's media and there was no internet. So if you were interested in anything through a female lens, anything about a woman's life. So it's a furphy to say that women's magazines were just about beauty tips and sex tips. They weren't. They were also about career and relationship and sexual health and contraception and breast cancer and stories about domestic violence and eating disorders. So anything to do with being a woman or a girl, if you wanted to know about it, the mainstream media didn't cover it. So you could only find that information in women's magazines and girls' magazines. So as time went on, and certainly after the internet came along, they became a little less relevant because they stopped reflecting perhaps the world as it was. But when I had a look at Eevee, when you look at the covers, Eevee actually is a print magazine that comes out once a year, but it's a website and it mostly is a brand that lives online and social. And for a bit of comparison, Cosmo in the US has about 4 million Instagram followers. Eevee has a couple of 100,000, but it's definitely growing. And I think what it reflects is this very Meghan Markle, ballerina farm, Nara Smith, tradwife idea. And ironically, all of those women I mentioned work incredibly hard and have businesses that make it seem like they don't work and that kind of fetishize the idea of expansive leisure and being able to be take homemaking to this elevated level and making bath salts and decorating cakes and dressing nicely. And what's interesting about Eevee is that it also has a lot of sex tips, but it's about it has a disclaimer, it's for married women only, because it's very obviously anti-abortion, casual sex, anti-contraception, against all those things. So the subversive message is that this idea of traditional homemaking is the ideal state for women.
And I suppose it reveals that there was an inherent politics within the women's magazine, and that we took for granted that that politics was quite left-leaning.
I think in recent years, yes. Like in the internet era, absolutely. Before that, I wouldn't argue that was the case.
Yeah, but I agree. But I think it's interesting. We see everything very much through a polarized political lens now. I think ideology is a closer thing, because the women's magazines, the whole idea of them was like, you can be anything you want to be, you go girl, right? Yeah. Like in lots of different ways, not in that literal language.
And choice feminism.
Yeah, and this movement is about trying to appeal to the women who are turning back towards what they call more feminine values.
Or have always been like that and have never felt reflected. So there are a certain portion of women, for example, who are pro-life, right? And who have felt alienated by women's media, that broadly, if you're thinking your Jezebel, the Cut, Mamamia, there's Cosmo, Cleo, they are without ever, I mean, we've explicitly said it, but not necessarily explicitly saying it.
Pro-choice.
They're pro-choice, right?
Choice feminism.
Or they talk about contraception very liberally. And so this to me is it's a swing back, but clearly they've acknowledged that there's a gap. And as we've said before, this is now the status quo. So I think that's why this started in 2019. We're now in 2025. And clearly
it's met its moment.
In a way that it maybe kind of even anticipated.
I think it's trying to, because what it is it's marketing of a particular kind of idea of what a woman should be.
Yes.
And the idea of whether or not that's just reflecting something that's already there, or whether it's actually a political push. It's a political push. Of course it is. Because the truth of it is, all the stats tell you that young women are actually more progressive than they've ever been, and that the gap between men and women when it comes to politics, the gender divide in political voting, particularly in America, is very stark.
But whether or not these are the majority, I'm not saying this is the majority, but I'm saying they exist.
They do exist, but there's no question that I don't think this is the same as like make some jam. This is like reject feminism, stay home, submit to your husband. It's making conservative Christian values sexy. That's what it is.
I don't think so necessarily. Well, I think it is. But what's interesting about it is that they're zeroing in on this kind of moderate, apolitical, exhausted woman who's really broken down by the lack of support for working mothers.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this sense. I think it's so interesting that they're positioning feminine as being the opposite of feminist.
Yeah.
As if feminism, and we saw some wild things on their social media where it was like, I'm an ex-feminist and I once went to this feminist meeting and everyone was naked and they were slapping people.
That's what I mean, that they have a very specific political agenda.
It's very demonising of feminism. But I also think that there's a huge number of women who are really disenfranchised with this idea that wanting to find a partner, wanting to be a mother, not wanting to hustle is somehow a betrayal of feminism. And I think that suggests that feminism has an image problem, and it always has in many ways, but the fact that they don't think that feminism includes them and that feminism actively disparages them is a real shame.
It's a shame, and it's also, I see how they got there.
Yeah, I do
too. I would say that when I look at the last 10, 15 years of feminism, what it left behind was motherhood. I think it moved on to a bunch of niche issues, and I think that for the women who did get married and have kids, which is still the status quo, let's not pretend it isn't, I don't think feminism knows what to do with them.
I don't think it's feminism. I think it's society. I think there is no question that the central thesis here, which is what you'll see in a lot of these conservative influencer things, which is a truth that feminists also talk about a lot, which is now women broadly are expected to do the lion's share of work at home and out in the world, and we haven't been given the support enough to do it. You'll find that most feminist causes talking about things like affordable childcare and domestic equality are a massive part of feminism. I don't think it's true that they don't talk about that. But I think that what this is doing is it's very much marketing the idea that I think it's demonizing the idea that all feminists hate kids, all feminists hate being at home, all feminists don't want to get married, and none of that is true. But there's a very convenient conservative message, isn't it?
Well, even we were talking on Monday about Chapel Roan saying, I don't know a happy parent. I can see how a woman might get to a point where they look at it and go, I don't know a happy feminist. Feminists don't seem happy. No. They seem really tired.
But that depends what you call a feminist. Well, do you know what I mean? Like, most women I know are feminists, but are you just talking about women who talk online about feminism a lot and that they don't seem happy? Because do you not think that maybe feminism has just become so mainstream now that it's kind of everybody? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking about particular sort of pundits or particular figureheads of feminism.
The most shouty ones.
Where, it got very shouty and alienating for, I think, a lot of women, and I just understand how they got there. And there was a line in White Lotus this week that I thought encapsulated this, which was the mother from North Carolina, and she meets a woman who's married to an older man, and she basically says to her, do you need saving? And there's this sense that we patronize conservative women thinking, oh my goodness, you're a tool of the patriarchy, you poor thing. You don't know, but you've been brainwashed and you're oppressed. And these women are going, I am not brainwashed, I am not oppressed, this is what I believe. Now, I don't agree with, the politics inherent in a lot of this, but what I will say is that when I went on the website, I felt my body physiologically exhale because I was like, oh my God, imagine living in an existence where we're not oppressed.
They talk about a soft life. It's a soft life. It
was beautiful. There were no issues. There was no chat of domestic violence, of like all of that stuff. Yeah. It's like, look like over
utopia.
Here.
What they're selling has hooked you because actually there is shitloads of ideological stuff on that website.
You're right.
So as I said in my intro, it lures you in with here's the nails and here's the blah.
Yeah.
But then it's talking about how contraception is evil and it's talking about how wanting to earn a living is evil. You've got... The thing about this is it's not at all about, for me, and I think you're falling, not you specifically, but the argument you're putting forward falls into a trap that women always have to be pitted against each other. This has got nothing to do with that for me. Why I think that this is a dangerous, and that's an overstated word, but an interesting thing to observe and watch, right? The owner of it, by the way, she, like a lot of Trump world people, they say, oh, we love how much this upsets liberals. She says, liberals hate this magazine. Why shouldn't there be a magazine for conservative women? I don't hate it at all. But I find it fascinating because it's a soft way to get in to a woman's mind and start whispering in her ear. And what they're whispering in your ear is, don't work, don't make your own money, don't have bodily autonomy, don't make your own choices.
I'm with you.
And dress like a milkman.
And exactly. And it's like, and it looks sexy and beautiful and aspirational because everyone is gorgeous, just like on the tradwife thing. Everybody has an adoring husband who wants to have sex with them all the time. Everybody has these beautiful, well-groomed children and these lovely homes. And so it's doing exactly what women's magazines have always done, which is package aspiration and then lure you in and then give you a lot of standards that are hard to live up to. Whether that's girl boss life or whether that's soft wife, tradwife life, it's the same thing.
I'm with you, but what this revealed to me was that left-wing publications that might not brand themselves as that have been doing the same thing for 10 years, that you can go and have a look at all their headlines and go, there's nothing here. And then you click on one, you go, oh, that's a really radical idea. Whether or not I agree with it, I can see how if you weren't super progressive or super left wing, you would feel alienated by that because there's an assumption that you just agree that women should be having rampant casual sex and
that's empowering for everyone.
Yes.
And you don't need a man and you don't need motherhood and maybe you don't. And I think what to me, what feminism is about choices. But some women find those choices overwhelming, and some women would like to be kept because it seems easier than both having to work as hard as a man but also do all the childcare and homemaking as well. It was interesting when, I was preparing for this, I got an email from Meghan Markle.
Would you please stop putting Meghan? Meghan would be very upset to think that you're putting her in the same bucket as Eevee.
Well, I think it's all under the same umbrella, because in this email, because I signed up for the As Ever mailing list, she says, in part, of course you'll find the raspberry spread that started it all presented in keepsake packaging that you can repurpose to tuck away love notes or special treasures and to remember this pivotal moment with me. Think of it as our time capsule. And by the way, once you've enjoyed every spoonful of this fruit spread, you may want to do what I do, rinse the jar and use it as a small bud vase for flowers on your nightstand or to hold your pens on your desk. But my point is that this idea of these women and Mrs. Hugo Boom, who is the 33-year-old co-founder of Eevee along with her husband, and Meghan both have to work really, really, really hard and have a huge number of, let's be honest, other women in their lives doing the actual work of helping to look after their children and helping to clean their houses and do all of those things. And that's fine. But to me, it's more the disconnection with we're all just pretending that we're not working. So you have to work really hard because everybody needs to earn money. But then you also have to be this domestic goddess, which just feels like more pressure.
I listened to an interview with the founder who said that this magazine or this publication is about women who want love and marriage, right? That was like her summary of what it means. There is a portion of feminism which is not, to even talk about it as some kind of homogenous thing is ridiculous. But let's just say some of the loudest voices maybe have disparaged love and marriage, maybe have suggested that there is something.
Well, it doesn't work out that well for everybody.
Exactly, it doesn't. And there has been some really valid and important criticisms of those institutions. But and they say that they have data to suggest that most women still want love and marriage, then they're just going, well, this is
it's
the
like
place
women have
for
been
you.
shamed for wanting to find a soulmate.
Which, and I think that the love and marriage, I think
women feel.
But that's a disingenuous description of what she's selling.
But the disparaging of love and marriage or the suggestion that is somehow anti-feminist to want, I think what's happened is that's left a wide gaping hole for the tradwife phenomenon, is that it is something that has just been left to women have been looking to be reflected.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also, one of the things that I find kind of troubling about all this is that everything in life now has to be so polarized. So if you do like making jam or baking cakes or staying home, then you're conservative.
Just finally on the birth control point, I also think that's another wide open hole that has maybe been something we haven't interrogated enough, and therefore it's been co-opted by a conservative agenda when there are a lot of women who aren't necessarily conservative who are going, hey, actually want to kind of flag that there are some issues. Like as a millennial woman who was prescribed birth control at 14 because I had terrible periods, and it changed my body, it changed my moods, and then when I went to the doctor and when I've got anxiety and depression, I was then medicated more on a different medication. Like, it is something that needs to be discussed. And I think I understand how women have been radicalized into this, like, we don't do any contraception thing, because I think it's been clumsily done at points.
So the other business that these co-founders have is a natural a hormonal tracking app that's meant to it's like a fertility app that helps you try and avoid or seek pregnancy based on where you are at in your cycle. And they also sell vitamins for women who want to give up birth control. So there is definitely and, you know, it's no accident, of course, that they publish a whole lot of articles about how terrible birth control is. Now, for some women, it really is. It's not that there's no truth in that, but the risks of the kind of birth control app that they're peddling are unexpected pregnancy.
And they're pro-life. So what are your options?
Exactly. And in America, where it's increasingly hard to do anything about any accidental pregnancies.
And you know what's interesting? Their viral milkmaid dress, which they also sell, they say in some of the marketing, warning might cause unplanned pregnancy because you look so hot, your husband just can't help but ravish you.